I thought this was going to be group therapy. Turns out it's a group celebration, ladies and gentlemen. Syracuse basketball 17-point comeback. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in a Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Syracuse basketball trailed to Notre Dame by 17 points in the first half. It was 25-8. The Orange are getting booed. The students are chanting "Fire Autry." And guess what? Syracuse basketball comes back to beat Notre Dame 77-69. And we're going to break it all down here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. And before we get to everything, I would love to hear from you. Please comment your reaction in the comment section below because, look, ladies and gentlemen, I'll admit to you all, I was definitely acting very rationally when Syracuse basketball was down by 17 points in this one. Totally in my mind, I thought it's okay. The Orange are going to battle and they're going to win this one. That was definitely going through my mind, right? I would love to hear your thoughts on what your reaction was because that was a terrible start, but my goodness, what a comeback. We're going to talk about how the Orange came back, the adjustment that Adrian Autry made. That's right, Adrian Autry. He gets a lot of grief here on this podcast, but today he's going to get a lot of credit for this one. Also, Kyle Cuffe and Choppa really provided the spark and the belief that the Orange were going to come back. And finally, this was a huge ACC win for Syracuse basketball. Tons to talk about here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Syracuse basketball was down 25-8. 25-8 in the first half. Here we go again. This is going to be a group therapy session, ladies and gentlemen, but not so fast. The Orange displayed guts, they displayed fight, and they displayed determination to beat Notre Dame 77-69. Let's talk about the end of game sequence. There was around 2 minutes left to play in this one, and Syracuse basketball displayed its best effort sequence of the season I have seen all year. And I'm sure if you guys all caught the ending of this game, and I don't blame you if you didn't, because look, when they were down in the first half, there's an NFL playoff game going on right now. I would completely understand if you turned it off and turned on the NFL playoff game. But my goodness, if you were one of those people that turned the game off, you missed a treat. With around 2 minutes left to play in this game, the Orange are up 69-65 on Notre Dame, and they proceed to get 4 consecutive offensive rebounds. It was just an incredible display of determination. Jaquan Carlos, I mean, shout out to him. He got one of those rebounds. He just ripped it away from a 6'10" Tay Davis of Notre Dame. Jaquan Carlos is 6'0" 190-pound nothing. Gets a lot of criticism from myself and many of you all. But that was a heck of an offensive rebound. You have to admit it, right? We have to give him credit when he does something good. And he did something great there. Now, the sequence, how did it end, you may ask? Well, I'm glad you asked because Eddie Lampkin got fouled. And he missed both the free throws. So Syracuse basketball was still only up by about 4 points with a minute to go. But at the very least, it bled a lot of clock with the Orange ahead. And it also showed that even though the outcome didn't work out in Syracuse's favor in that sequence, I kind of had a gut feeling that Syracuse basketball was going to win after they got 4 straight offensive rebounds in this one. Now, Markus Burton, credit to him. He was terrific, especially in the first half. More on that in a moment when we're talking about adjustments. But Markus Burton, he got a decent 3 to tie the game, but he missed it. The Orange hang on, and they win this one. And also, I got to call out someone here on this podcast, right? but it ain't going to be from Syracuse, ladies and gentlemen. If you are a Notre Dame fan who is watching and listening to this podcast, I understand that at the end of the game, there was a controversial illegal screen that was called. I get it. Markus Burton was running downhill and he was going to tie the game, but an illegal screen was called on whoever was picking Kyle Cuffe. So I understand. I get it. You as a Notre Dame fan are allowed to kind of have that reaction, but you know who's not allowed to have that reaction? At the end of the game, head coach Micah Shrewsberry of Notre Dame got ejected because he was complaining to the officials. I'm assuming it was about that illegal screen, and this is just a shout out to Micah Shrewsberry. You are a loser. Loser. Hold the L, Micah Shrewsberry. Hold the L. Your team was up by 17 points in the first half. Everyone's booing Syracuse. All the Syracuse fans, including myself, are definitely reacting very rationally to a poor start. And your team blows the lead, blows a golden opportunity in the ACC. And you have, I'm not going to say the word, but I think you all know what I'm thinking. You have the guts. You have the guts to complain about officiating. And he gets ejected. It led to a million free throws for Syracuse at the end of the game. I know the score says 77-69 Orange. It wasn't really like that. It was a one-possession game to the wire. But Micah Shrewsberry, loser. Loser energy. I know you got a great recruiting class coming in, Micah. I get it. You're a big, fat loser. That's what you are. Complaining about officials down by 17 points. Or, excuse me, blowing a 17-point lead. What a loser in him. But anyway, let's talk about the adjustment that Syracuse basketball made. All right, because they displayed Adrian Autry. I got to give him a lot of credit here. I really do. He gets a lot of grief on this podcast. A lot of us, including myself, don't want him to coach that third year, but you know what? When he does something good, we got to give him credit as well. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to give Adrian Autry some credit because Markus Burton for Notre Dame, he's a terrific player. He was just lighting it up in the first half in this one. He was just getting to his spots easily. Syracuse basketball had absolutely no answers for him. None. It didn't matter who was guarding him. Adrian Autry made a billion substitutions in the beginning of this one, trying to find someone who can guard him. Nobody could. He had 22 first half points. He was going to win the game single-handedly for Notre Dame. But in the second half, he only had 6 points on 2 of 10 shooting. The adjustment that Adrian Autry made was very simple. He took a page out of Pat Kelsey's book at Louisville and what they did to J.J. Starling in the last game that Syracuse played. He simply said, we're not going to let Markus Burton beat us. So in the pick and roll, Syracuse basketball stepped up on him and they double-teamed him in the second half. They didn't care who else scored points for Notre Dame as long as it wasn't Markus Burton. That was it. That was the adjustment that they made. They doubled him on the pick and roll. They were in his face the entire second half, and he couldn't get free at all. That was the adjustment that Adrian Autry made. It sounds really simple, and that's because it kind of is, but it worked because you look up and down Notre Dame's roster, who's going to beat them? Aside from Markus Burton, their best player, who was going to beat them? Same thing with Louisville did with J.J. Starling. If J.J. Starling isn't scoring for Syracuse, and by the way, he bounced back in this one with 21 points. Didn't have a great shooting day, but he had 21 points. If J.J. Starling isn't scoring, who's going to score for Syracuse with Donnie Freeman still out? Same thing that Adrian Autry realized with Notre Dame. As long as we can shut down Markus Burton, Notre Dame's going to have trouble scoring. In the second half, Notre Dame at 27 points total. That's it. So shout out to Adrian Autry, Syracuse basketball with an incredible comeback, 17 points down. Adrian Autry is a winner. Micah Shrewsberry is a loser. And shout out to the Orange for displaying guts and determination and fight in this one, and proving myself and many of you all wrong that they can come back and win games. They can take a punch and fight and win basketball games. Shout out to this team. with a very impressive victory inside the Dome. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. Please let me know your thoughts on this comeback victory. Coming up, the spark and belief that led to Syracuse's comeback. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. This message is brought to you by Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports, whether it's the playoffs or a regular season. Prizepicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get on the action with Prizepicks. And here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players. And if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, with Prizepicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. Prizepicks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Syracuse basketball comes back from 17 points down to beat Notre Dame 77-69. When you're down by a lot in a basketball game, when you're down by a lot like Syracuse was, you're down by 17 points, nothing, absolutely nothing is going the Orange's way. You definitely need something to go right. You need some sort of spark, and then you need some sort of belief that you can come back to win a game when you're down by so much. Because we have seen many instances in the Adrian Autry era where Syracuse will fall behind and they just will keep getting punched. They don't have that spark in them, and they don't have that surge to be able to get over the top. But in this game, they did. So let's talk about what ultimately led, I think, to the comeback in this one, okay? And there were two players that really spearheaded it in the first half. There's under 3 minutes to play, and the Orange are down by 16 points. It's not looking good when you're down by 16 with under 3 to go in the first half. And the first player is Kyle Cuffe. Kyle Cuffe gets an offensive rebound, falling away with one hand, and then a few seconds later, he finds himself wide open for a right wing three, and he makes it. It was a nice display of effort, energy, toughness to get the offensive rebound, then the awareness to get himself free, and he's wide open for a right wing three, and credit to him for the execution. He makes the three-pointer. It's a 13-point game with under 3 minutes to go in the first half. In the moment, it doesn't feel like very much because Syracuse is still down by so much. I got to be honest with you all. I didn't realize at that time that that was really the shot that got everything going. That to me was the spark of the comeback right there. Kyle Cuffe drilling that three-pointer. Seemed like it wasn't going to mean anything in the moment. It certainly did, because on the next possession, Syracuse basketball gets a stop. They're still down by 13 points. And guess who steps up? It's the freshman, Elijah Choppa Moore. And he certainly earned his nickname today. And before we get to that shot, Choppa Moore in this one had 8 points on 3 of 8 shooting, and he was 1 of 6 from the three-point line and played 17 minutes. It's not a bad game by any means, but you wouldn't realize his impact in this one by looking at the box score. You have to understand that he hit such a big shot that provided the belief that the Orange were going to come back, or that had at least a chance to come back. Prior to today, Elijah Moore had not scored since the Maryland game, which was on December 21st. He went six consecutive games without scoring a single point. And we talked about it a lot here on the podcast. It seemed like every post-game show I would mention, Elijah Moore is down 4 straight games. Elijah Moore's down 5 straight games. Elijah Moore's down 6 straight games without scoring a point. When is he finally going to get on the board? Well, he gets on the board in an emphatic way, because on the next possession after Kyle Cuffe drills a three-pointer to get them within 13, Choppa gets himself 3. He knocks down a 3 and gets fouled and 1 4-point play. A 4-point play. In the span of about 30 seconds, the Orange were dead, down by 16 points. Kyle Cuffe makes a three. It ultimately turns out to be the spark. And Elijah Moore gets a 4-point play. Most importantly, he converts on the free throw to make it a 4-point play. And now the Orange are within 9. So after that horrendous start, 9 points towards the end of the first half, that's not bad. I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, that's not bad. That's manageable. I've seen teams come back from 9 points. That's doable. And ultimately, the Orange end up closing the first half on a 9-2 run. So they're only down by 9 points at the halftime break. Okay. Look, I knew what I was going to say if Syracuse had lost this game. I knew what I was going to tell you all. I would have said that, hey, Syracuse basketball, they showed tremendous fight. They showed tremendous effort. But ultimately, what did them in was falling behind by so many points in the first half. But they won. And they won in a huge part because of Kyle Cuffe and Elijah Moore providing that spark of 7 points in about 30 seconds to make it a 16-point game to a 9-point game and ultimately end the half only down by 9. I'm thinking in that moment, okay, they can do it. They have a chance to do it. I've seen teams come back from 9 points. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you on this one because it doesn't show up in the box score what those two players did, but in that moment, it was huge. Because if they don't hit those shots, Syracuse basketball could have been down by 20 points at the half. And they're not coming back from 20. It's not going to happen. Maybe they could have shown fight and effort, but they got it to a respectable margin at the break. They're within shouting distance. And then from that point forward, it's okay, you're down by 9. Do you have that next comeback in you, that next surge? And to Syracuse's credit, they come out in the second half blistering. They weren't even that great on offense, but their defense was just ferocious at the start of the second half. It took Notre Dame about 4 minutes to finally get on the board in the second half. And they get within 2, and then they're battling back and forth. And towards the end of the game, Eddie Lampkin converts an and one, which finally gives Syracuse the lead late. Finally, their first lead of the game late in the game. So shout out to Eddie Lampkin at that. But the spark came from Kyle Cuffe, and the belief came from Choppa Moore. He was the right player to do it at the right time. He had been scoreless for so many games. We were wondering when he's going to make an impact, and he delivers a 4-point play. Turn the game completely around. Syracuse basketball comes back from 17 points to beat Notre Dame 77-69. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. We broke down how the comeback occurred. We broke down the spark and the belief of this comeback. And now coming up, the stakes of this game and why this game was such an important win for Syracuse. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Side note, talking about Syracuse here, if you bet them to win the game down by 17 points, more power to you. I wouldn't have done it, but if you bet Syracuse to win, you certainly made yourself a good amount of cash. Plus, if it was your first bet, you also got $300 in bonus bets. So shout out to you. If you are that person, credit to you for making that bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This was a big ACC win for Syracuse basketball. And let me tell you why that is the case, okay? Now, do I need to go chapter, song, and verse about how Syracuse basketball is not going to make the NCAA tournament at large? I'm going to spare you that brief statement, okay? I'm going to save you that 30 seconds. Let's talk about why this game was so important for the ACC tournament, all right? Both Syracuse and Notre Dame entered this game 2-4 in ACC play. Notre Dame They're not that great. They're not a great team, and Syracuse basketball, they have them on their home floor. If you recall, earlier this season, back in December, the first ACC game of the year, Syracuse went to Notre Dame, and they lost. They lost a close game late in this. They lost a close game late in South Bend. Markus Burton wasn't playing for Notre Dame, by the way. Neither was J.J. Starling, but I just want to point that out. Neither of the stars were playing in that one. Both the stars were playing in this game. So it's equal on both sides, but these are two not great teams. Now, I will say this about Notre Dame. So if you're a Notre Dame fan who's watching and listening to this, Notre Dame's I think they're going to make the ACC tournament. I don't see them missing. I can't see three teams being worse than them. I just can't. But both are 2-4 entering today in ACC play. So this is the type of team that Syracuse basketball needs to be. They need to take care of the teams that are in the middle of the pack or in the bottom feeders of the ACC. Now, I did see someone comment on one of my earlier podcasts. He commented after the Louisville game, why I am freaking out after losing to Louisville if the plan all along is to beat the bottom feeders and the teams in the middle of the pack. Louisville is an upper tier ACC team right now. Well, that's because I'm a fan and I'm an alumni of the school. And so I want to see Syracuse win games. I don't care who they're playing. That's just why. But in all practicality, these are the type of games that Syracuse basketball needs to win. And now they're 3-4 in the ACC. It's not a great record, but they're 3-4. Notre Dame's 2-5. And you split the season series against Notre Dame, which is huge. Right now, when you look at the ACC standings, there's one team that is a lock to miss the ACC tournament. There's only one that's a lock. Okay, Miami, if you think that Syracuse basketball is bad and they're not a great team, if you think Syracuse basketball is bad, you have not been paying attention to how bad Miami is. Miami might be the worst team in the country. That's right. I'm not joking. They actually might be the worst. I don't know if there is a worse team than the Miami Hurricanes. Now, Syracuse basketball is going to travel to Miami, so hopefully they don't lay an egg in that game. Hopefully they don't. They could lose to Miami, but they're bad. That's the one team that's a lock to miss the ACC tournament. But outside of that, there are plenty of teams that are candidates to fill in those other two slots. Syracuse is one of them. Notre Dame is one of them. And the Orange could not go 0-2 against Notre Dame. So they split the season series. They get to 3-4 in the ACC. And I would say, I don't know for sure. We have to see how the rest of the season plays out. But I think if Syracuse basketball wins 3 more games, that's it. That's all it is. Just 3 more games. I think Syracuse basketball will be at least in the ACC tournament, which I want to happen because there's no such thing as tanking in college sports. So any chance they have of pulling a miraculous run out of their you-know-whats, I would certainly take. And I hope you feel the same way as I do. So they get to 3-4. And by the way, the other thing that's important is this update, they're a game back of the 9 seed in the ACC. Right now, they're sitting at the 10. They're at the 10 line of the ACC. I've said to you guys before, and I'll say it again, I think the goal for the rest of the season, it's got to be to finish top 9 in the ACC. Because if you finish top 9, you get that first round bye. So you only got to win 4 games in 4 days to make the NCAA tournament. If they finish 10 or lower, which is where they are right now, or I should say 10 to 15, they have to win 5 games in 5 days. You have to play that extra game. Now, NC State did that last year, but that's not typically a good formula to have to go 5 games in 5 days in order to make the tournament. So hopefully they can finish top 9, get that first round bye. They're only a game back in the ACC. Do I think that Syracuse basketball is a good team? I don't, but neither is the ACC. The ACC is not a great conference this year in college basketball. It's doable. They're going to have to beat some of the more bottom feeders. They're going to have to beat Miami and Virginia Tech. They're going to have to do that. Right? But it's certainly possible they can finish top 9. But at least this win, for now, they are the 10 seed, and they are kind of in the ACC tournament. If they could just win a few more games. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. I think that about does it here, talking about Syracuse and Notre Dame. The Orange win 77-69. They come back from 17 points down to do it. As far as what is coming up on the podcast, we will put a bow on this game tomorrow, either late in the morning or early in the afternoon, in the One More Thing mini podcast. I'm not going to have a guest on for it. It'll just be myself. It'll be a 10 to 15 mini podcast closing out final thoughts on the game. If you have any more final thoughts, any ideas of what I should talk about, feel free to chime in right now in the comment section below, and I will take it into account. And also, I think I will publish, I shouldn't say publish, that sounds really official. I think I will post a full podcast on Syracuse football as well. So I think there's going to be multiple podcasts tomorrow. All right. I think so. All right. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And folks, if you can do me a favor, if you really like this podcast, tell one or two of your closest Syracuse Orange friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so the channel can grow and reach every Syracuse Orange fan. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And I will see you guys all again soon for the One More Thing mini podcast. Take care, everyone.